Hey, Greg Kappas here with GGN in Scottsdale, Arizona at our home church again. I want to give an illustration of what I'm talking about today. I'm at a basketball hoop here, and recently cement was poured and this basketball hoop became very solid. It's bolted to the ground upon cement like hard rock, and now people play basketball. It can be adjusted with a hoop and the size and all that, but the key part of this basketball hoop and backboard being able to stay intact is its foundation. Meanwhile, I'm gonna walk with me over here. I'm by a tetherball place where they play tetherball, and the foundation here is not quite as solid. It's filled with water, but it can move, and the danger of it falling or tipping over is much greater, and that's part of what a tetherball is made for, but it wasn't built with a solid foundation. And today I'm reading a question from one of our friends here at Trinity Church, Joseph Truffin, and he wrote a question in regarding wisdom. And Joseph specifically commented on Matthew 7:24 through 27. I want to read it. Joseph writes, the Bible talks about wise and foolish builders in Matthew 7:24 through 27. What are some wise words of God that we can put in practice and be like the house that stands after the storm? And by contrast, what did the foolish man do that was different, and he apparently failed? Let me read to you a great passage that Joseph just talked about, my friend Joseph. Jesus is speaking in Matthew 7:24 through 27. It says, therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. But everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand, and the rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. And listen to this in verse 28 and 29. And so it was, when Jesus had ended these sayings, that the people were astonished. They were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority and not as the scribes. The idea about being astonished is there was a buzz of excitement, a buzz of astonishment, because Jesus still teaches, and he taught back then in such a unique way with wisdom that no one has ever taught. I want to talk a little bit about this. Whenever we ask questions about Scripture, it's always important to look at its context. First off, in Matthew 7, verses 21 through 23, and 7:15 through 20, we see an emphasis by Jesus dealing with false faith. In 7:21 through 23, he says, go away, I never knew you, referring to people who didn't have a personal relationship with him. And then in 7:15 through 20, right before that, he talks about our fruit, and if we bear bad fruit, we show that we don't really know him. In fact, the text says, by your fruits you will know them. So it's an issue of false faith or a poor foundation like this tetherball would have in comparison to the basketball foundation. But then in genuine faith, we see in Matthew 8:1 through 4, the leper. Beautiful story about a leper having great faith. Lepers, by the way, just hardly were ever healed in the history of the world. We see a few stories in the Bible regarding leprosy and the healing of Jesus Christ upon a leper. But here specifically, in the healing of God upon a leper, but here specifically, a leper has rare faith. So he's a man with godly foundation versus the false teachers, the scribes, the Pharisees that weren't willing to listen. So let me mention one thing more, and we'll come back to this next week with another video to explain the passage more. But there's an external appearance. People have to have a godly faith like the leper in chapter 8, verses 1 through 4. But you also need to realize that there can be an external appearance. In this case, both builders look like they're building a house that may very well have looked very similar that Jesus talked about in John 7. The external appearance often in people's lives is different than what's really the foundation. I'll continue this next week with Joseph's next question, same question, but continue it next week regarding some more development.